Open your eyes and look around. In your eyes, do you see the very things that you read about coming true? Don't you realize the moments are near? Correct yourself in your affairs. He has made it crystal clear. These are the signs of the time. Assalamu alaikum. Sunnah followers, new class, stay tuned. Signs of the times.
And tonight what we're going to do is detail the Gog and the Magog, known as the Yajooj and Majooj. And we're going to answer a lot of questions that many of you have about these people, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the Gog and the Magog, or Yajooj and Majooj. A lot of people think that these are aliens from another planet. Some people think that these are jinns. You know, some people think that they don't exist yet, but they will be in the future. We're going to answer all of those questions. And the one thing we want to remember is that they are one of the greater signs of the last hour. And Allah is the one that wills for everything to happen. And Allah wills for them to exist for a reason. They exist for a reason, and they will fulfill the destiny that Allah has decreed for them. Okay? And they will not emerge until after Jesus alayhi salam comes back as the ruler over the world. And they will come much later after he destroys the Antichrist. And that's where we stopped off our last week with this class. We're speaking about the arrival of Jesus, how Jesus will announce to the world who he is. He will destroy the Antichrist, and then he will make Jerusalem his place of rule. And Masjid al-Mahdi, the Masjid al-Aqsa, I'm sorry, the Mahdi now. Masjid al-Aqsa will be the place of his rule. And that's where the Muslims will be praying at. Now, a lot of people ask, will the Muslims pray facing that direction? No, the direction of this nation will always be the Kaaba. You know, that is a supplication that the Prophet Muhammad made. And remember, when Jesus comes back, he is not coming back as a prophet. He is not coming back as a prophet of the people. He's coming back as a ruler of the world. And he will reinstate Islam as the universal religion of the world. And he will revive the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which had become abandoned even before the Antichrist even emerged. And we talked about how once Jesus brings an end to the war and the whole world accepts him for what he is, there will be 5 to 7 years of peace. 5 to 7 years of peace. And we also spoke about how Jesus will rule for 40 years. So he will live here on this earth, and he will die here on this earth. He will live here on this earth for 40 years, and the first 7 years of his reign will be peaceful years. It's Allah's way of allowing the earth to regrow and replenish itself after the destruction of those atomic bombs with that World War III. Allah will allow the animals to repopulate, and Allah will allow us to repopulate too from this horrible war that we had been through for over 40 years or so. Okay? Because remember, we talked about how before Jesus comes, the Antichrist will be here for 40 years. So you know, it's a lot of havoc. You can imagine with all those atomic bombs, the destruction done. No more weapons like we have today. No more all those nuclear weapons spent destroying the earth. So we will end up going back to how we were in dystopia times. You know, we won't have the atomic bombs we had before. We won't have the military prowess that we've had before, because the earth will be pretty much destroyed from all of that atomic radiation and all of that. So Jesus, alayhi salam, will come back. The world will experience a few years of peace, just a few years of peace. And then the fitan, or the trials, the hardships will begin again. And they will begin again with the Gog and the Magog. So let me put the PowerPoint up. I cover what Allah has told us about Yajooj and Majooj, or the Gog and the Magog, as we call it in English. We call it the Gog and the Magog. I know they made a movie about the Gog and the Magog. I know they made a movie about the jinn. That was all garbage. None of it's true. And by the way, that movie, The Jinn, was made by a Shiite. The Shiites, they even own the movie industry. That movie about the Gog and the Magog, it wasn't based on any hadith, because the Shiites have their own hadiths. They don't accept Bukhari and Muslim. You know, they don't accept all of the Quran. They make their own Quran too. So don't look at that movie, the Gog and the Magog, nor the Jinn, because it's not based on anything that Allah says or from the authentic hadiths. It's based on the Shiites' methodology and way of thinking, which is weird, which is I don't understand to this day. But we're going to be covering the authenticated hadiths about Yajooj and Majooj. And first off, I'm going to answer the question about them. Yajooj and Majooj, or the Gog and the Magog, they are not aliens. They are not monsters. They are not jinn. They are people like you and me, and they are in existence right now. They're human beings. They have women. There's women, men, children. They have animals. They have cattle. They have donkeys. They have sheep and goats. They live right here on earth. And Allah speaks about them in the Surah of the Cave. Allah tells us who these people are and why we can't see them. It's not because they're invisible. They're not invisible. It's not because they're jinn, part of the unseen world. They're part of the seen world, but they are behind a mountain. And Allah was particular in not telling us what mountain it is. So that way we don't go looking for them. Because if you go looking for them, you can dig them out. You'll be able to hear them because they people like you and me. You'll be able to hear them talking. You'll be able to see the hole that they be digging. So they exist. It's just that Allah didn't tell us where, and He ain't going to, because Allah is in control of everything. And Allah tells us in the Quran that there was a righteous man, a king. His name was Dhul Qarnayn. And by the way, Dhul Qarnayn was not Alexander the homosexual. A lot of Muslims think that Dhul Qarnayn was Alexander the Great. Why would Allah raise up a person of honor who's a homosexual and who deals in bestiality and who was a pagan who worshiped the sun and the moon? The reason why Yusuf Ali used that in his translation was he was trying to appeal to the Christians and the unbelievers to get them to convert to Islam. But the commentary of the Quran, I want y'all to remember, the commentary of the Quran is not a part of the Quran. It's just the person that put the Quran together their view. And that's why a lot of people don't like Yusuf Ali's transliteration of meaning, because he put all that crazy stuff in there. Dul Qarnayn was not an Alexander the Great. Dul Qarnayn was a righteous man who believed in Allah, and he had wives. He did not lay with men, and he did not lay with animals. He was so good and righteous that Allah made him a king here on earth, and he would travel from the east to the west, just checking out what was going on in the world. They didn't have phones back then. So one day when Dul Qarnayn was traveling, he came to a place between two mountains, and he stopped with his army and his horse because he saw some people who were speaking in a language. And these people couldn't understand anything that he was saying, and he couldn't understand what they were saying. And then finally, he told the people, calm down, speak slowly. And what they did was these people were speaking like so fast because they were so upset. They were so terrified. And they told Dul Qarnayn, they said, you're the king. You're the one that Allah has blessed. They said, there's some people here, the Yajooj and the Majooj. They're bad people. They kill us. They rob us. They destroy our land. They said, is there anything you can do to keep these people from killing us and oppressing us? So Dul Qarnayn said, okay, where do they all live down there? They said, yes, they live down there in the valley between these two mountains. So Dul Qarnayn was also intelligent. So he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, if you help me, I will build a barrier that will prevent them from coming up out of the valley. And this barrier will be a wall, a strong wall that will lock them in the valley. So that way they can't come up here and do harm to the rest of the people. Okay? And Allah speaks about this in the Quran. Listen to what Allah says in the interpretation of the meaning. When he reached between the two mountains, he found two other mountains and a people who scarcely said a word. And they ran to him and said, O Dul Qarnayn, the Yajooj and the Majooj, they are creating great mischief in the land. Shall we pay you some money so that you might build a barrier between us and them? And that's when he said, that power in which my Lord has established me with is your money, is your payment. He said, just help me by helping me, and I will erect between you and them a wall. He said, find pieces of iron, blocks of iron, and I will build a wall between them and you. And when they began to build the wall, and when he had filled the gap up, he said, blow. And when he had made them blow, a fire appeared. He made a fire to melt the iron. You know, fire melts iron. He said, I'm building this fire to melt this iron to lock them in. He said, and bring me some copper so I can pour the copper over the iron too. So that's what happened. So it was Dul Qarnayn. He was a leader, a king, and a righteous man. You know, these people, the Gog and the Magog, they're human beings, but to keep them from coming up, creating chaos, Allah allowed him to build a wall made out of iron. So they are locked behind a wall of iron. Okay? And they cannot, come through it until Allah allows them to. And it goes on to say in the Quran that after Dul Qarnayn had built the wall, he said, this wall is a mercy from my Lord. But when when the promise of Allah comes true, he will destroy this wall. And the promise of Allah always comes true. So he was letting the people know that they will stay behind this iron wall until Allah decrees for them to come out. And on that day, he said they will come out and they will be like surges of waves. They will be released before the last hour. And then Allah will collect them all together. So, this was the qadr of Allah. It's the qadr of Allah, the decree of Allah that the Gog and the Magog, because they're so bad, they're so barbaric, they're barbaric people. It's Allah's decree that they stay behind the wall locked between those two mountains until before the last hour. So, they are human beings. They are not jinn. They are not Martians. They're not animals. They're women and men like you and me. They have babies, children, food, houses, but they're primitive. Remember, they have no exposure to the world. So the way Dhul Qarnayn found them back in that century, that's how they are today. Whatever weapons they had then, which are picks and irons and swords, that's what they have today. Allah has not exposed them to any technology. Allah has not exposed them to any modern medicine. They do not have the internet or any of that. They don't work like we do and drive cars. They still live like they lived back in that century with their horses, their cows, their animals, and their primitive tools. And they are a lot of people. They have populated. Imagine, you're locked between two mountains. Imagine how many of them there are. They procreate, have babies, they die, get buried. And they are the descendants of Adam, as the Prophet Muhammad tells us in this authentic hadith from Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, on the day of judgment, Allah will say, "O Adam," and Adam will say, "I am at your service." And Allah will say, "Bring forth the people who will be led to the hellfire." And Adam alayhi salam will say, "Who are the people who are to be led to the hellfire?" And that's when Allah will say to Adam, out of every 1,000 people, 999 will enter hell and only one will enter paradise. Now, this is an authentic hadith, guys, that many Daya today misinterpret the meaning of. I was listening to a very famous speaker today. He was talking about the Yajooj and Majooj. And he said that this hadith, he quoted the same hadith I did, but you can tell he hasn't studied the hadiths. He may have memorized the Quran, but he doesn't understand it, because he said in his lecture today that there will be no Muslims in the hellfire. He said that there are so many of the Yajooj and Majooj that for every Muslim in the world, 999 of them will enter hell. That is not what this hadith means. This hadith, the source is Bukhari and Muslim. This is just 5 sentences of a 2-page hadith. If I was to put this whole khutbah together and write it out, it would be 2 pages. That's why you have to be careful with those hadiths. The hadiths are not put in chronological order, nor are you find bits and pieces here and there of one lecture. But maybe this is a part here. Here's another part there and another chapter there. Let me give you the meaning, the full meaning of this hadith. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was telling the companions about how in the day of judgment, Allah will tell Adam, out of every 1,000 people, 999 will enter hell. Those will be the Gog and the Magog. And only one of the others will enter paradise. The companions became afraid. And the companions, this is also in Bukhari, the companions said, "O Prophet of Allah, there's only 100 of us or less." Because remember, there were not that many Muslims in the beginning of Islam. They said, "So we're doomed, O Prophet of Allah." They said, "All of us will be in the hellfire." And that's when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Do not fret, my companions. Do not fret, my companions. Do not fret, my companions, because they will make up the difference for you. 999 of them will enter hell, and so that each one of you, my companions, will enter paradise." And the prophet had thousands of companions, guys. The prophet didn't have just 10 companions. He had thousands. So when you hear these famous brothers use this hadith and try to tell you, "Don't worry, my brothers and sisters, none of us will have to worry because they will make up the difference for us. We'll all be in paradise." That's a brother that doesn't understand the religion. I'm sorry, he doesn't know the religion well. Like I tell you guys, we have to sit with the people in knowledge so they can break down the meaning of these hadiths to us, as this hadith was broken down to me by Sheikh Abu Atayib. Okay? So, they will make up the difference for the companions of the prophet, but not us. Not us. Not us. So don't get it twisted. But there's a lot of them. There's so many of them. If you look, if the prophet had 6,000 companions, you do the math. 999 times 6,000. That's a lot of people. Okay? And again, they are human beings. They have not experienced technology. This is how, back in the time of Dhul Qarnayn, this is how the people looked back in his century. See how the people were barbaric in dress? They didn't have the technology we have today and the electricity. This is how the people basically dressed. So what I did was a picture here trying to give you an idea as to how these people look. They're human beings like you and me, but they look just like the ancient Vikings. The ancient Vikings, because that was around that time period. And Allah has told us that the wall built by Dhul Qarnayn is keeping them from coming out. Allah says in the interpretation, the meaning, Yajooj and Majooj, they cannot climb over the wall, nor can they dig through it. But that doesn't mean that they're not trying. Every day they got women and men trying to come out of that wall with their little knives. Remember, they don't have bombs and guns, and all they got is bows and arrows and knives and swords. So they trying to dig through all that iron. Okay? And again, when Dhul Qarnayn said, when the promise of Allah comes, he'll level the mountain to the ground. I mean, the wall to the ground. In other words, they'll come out when Allah decrees it. Allah is in charge of everything. I tell you guys, Allah says in the Quran that war comes from him. He's the one that brings war. And this is going to be a horrific war. This war here will be just as bad as the World War III. And it's going to be sick because these people will do a lot of damage and they won't have the bombs that the war before Jesus came had. Okay? And as Allah says, they will come out in hordes on one another. And this will be close to the last hour. It'll be during the time of Jesus. And if anyone is living on earth at that time, when Jesus is here and this happens, this is when you will know that the last hour is almost here. Okay? And again, Allah tells us in another verse that even though he's preventing them from coming out, that does not mean that they're not trying. Every day they're digging and digging and digging with their spears and knives. As he says in the interpretation of meaning, when Yajooj and Majooj are let loose from their wall, and they swoop down from every mound, and the true promise shall be close to fulfillment. It is then that mankind will be resurrected from their graves, and you will see the unbelievers staring in horror as they say, woe unto us. So Allah lets us know that that's the dalil, that when they appear, you know that the last hour is near. And again, another picture as to how they probably look. This is another animated picture of how they look. AI picture, like the early Vikings probably. See their swords, their knives. They're dressed like that. That's how they, back in Dul Qarnayn's time, this is how the people dressed. No technology. They're human beings, but they're just barbaric. And again, they will come down from that mountain and they will spread corruption on the earth. Okay? And our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that this will happen during the time of Jesus alaihi salam, after Jesus has destroyed the Antichrist. And when Allah sent this revelation to the Prophet, it scared him, because also Allah said why he will release them. Remember, guys, Allah tells us in the Quran that he's the one that brings war. The war that's going on now, the Zionists didn't do this. This is Allah. Allah is the one that sent this war to Gaza. Just like Allah is the one that sent the war to Syria. Allah is the one that sent the war to Kuwait, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to Hawaii, to Japan, to the America. Allah is the one that sends war. He tells us that. And he always sends it for a reason. He said to cleanse the earth of bad people. And also so that you people living on earth can see who are the true believers or not. So Allah told the Prophet Muhammad that after the years of peace with Jesus, he will cause that wall to collapse. And the Yajooj and the Majooj, they will come out with a purpose. What is their purpose? Their purpose is to destroy the Arab countries and to kill all the Arabs in those countries that's living on earth at that time. And the Prophet became scared. He said, why? And Allah told him, because Islam began with them, but they failed to enjoin the good. They failed to forbid the evil. They changed the religion of Allah. They were the first to change the religion. They were the first to fall in love with the wealth of this world. So now it's time to pay. Allah will release the Gog and the Magog. They're not going to go to America. They're not going to go to Europe. They're not going to go to Australia like the Antichrist did. The Antichrist will travel the entire earth. The Yajooj and Majooj will not. They will only destroy that part of the earth. The Gulf area, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, the Emirates, Jordan. All of that part of the world will be destroyed. And they'll go across and hit North Africa. Oh, yeah. They're going to hit Egypt. They'll hit Algeria. They'll hit Morocco, Tunisia, Libya. Okay? They're only coming to destroy the Arabic part of the world. What's the source? Bukhari. We have this wonderful hadith in Bukhari, and it's narrated by Zainab. May Allah be pleased with her, one of the wives of the Prophet. She said the Prophet came to visit her one night, and he was so agitated. He kept saying, La ilaha illallah, woe to the Arabs, woe to the Arabs for the evil that has approached. He said Allah has allowed the Yajooj and the Majooj to pierce a hole through the wall, the size of a little hole. And Zainab said, well, why are you afraid? He said, because they will destroy the Arabs. And she said, oh, messenger of Allah, will Allah allow them to destroy all of us, even if there are good Arabs living amongst us? He said, yes, if evil is widespread, because, and then he will raise us all up together and judge us individually. So that authentic hadith, you know, that you can find the whole hadith. I tried to shorten it here, but there's the whole hadith, which is long, is in Bukhari. Okay. And he goes on to tell her why, because Islam began with us. And we were the first to abandon it. And we failed to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. We became in love with the life of this world, this dunya, the wealth. So that's the difference between the Gog and the Magog and the Antichrist. The Antichrist will travel the entire earth and cause a chaos. The Gog and the Magog only have one purpose: to destroy all the Arabic lands. And again, they will come after Jesus has defeated the Antichrist, years after that peace. In fact, there'll be so many of them. There'll be so many of them, thousands of them, that when Jesus receives the call, this hadith is all in Bukhari. It goes into great detail in Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim. It goes on to say that when Jesus hears about the destruction that these people are committing, he and his army will ride out of Jerusalem. But when he sees the damage they have done and how barbaric they are, he will look and say, what can I do? I can't defeat these people. It's too many of them, and they're ignorant. They're like animals. So that's when he will call upon Allah. He will make dua, asking Allah to send him some help, because there's nothing he can do to destroy them. And that's when Allah will send insects down, an insect like a worm. And the insects, after they destroy all the Arabic countries, and after they kill all the Arabs that are living there, Allah will then send worms down. And the worms will bite them on the back of their necks, and they will die overnight. They will catch a cellulitis disease and die overnight. And then the next morning, when Jesus, alayhi salam, and his army come down and look, they will not find one part of the earth that doesn't stink with these people's body odor. And that's when Jesus will make dua again. He will ask Allah, he will say, oh Allah, their dead bodies are everywhere. What are we to do? And Allah will send birds that will pick up the dead bodies of the Gog and the Magog and dispose of them in the ocean. And then Allah will send rain, which will cleanse the earth. It'll wash away all the blood. It'll wash away the stench. And again, I tried to shorten this hadith, because if I were to put the whole hadith here, it would have taken me about 5 PowerPoints, and it would have made this class longer. And also, Imam Muslim adds that when these people come down from the mountains, there's so many of them that they will drink up all the water in the lakes. all the lakes between the in Syria, Iraq, Kuwait, the Emirates, the Gulf, Egypt. That I guess that means the Nile River too. They'll drink up all the water. That's how many of them it is. Imam Muslim puts. Imam Muslim says it'll be so bad that after Allah has those worms destroy them, the people that are living on earth will come out and look and say, what happened? There used to be water in this lake. I'm assuming in Egypt, they'll say, where's the Nile River? They'll say in Iraq, where's the Euphrates River? There used to be water here. And then Imam Muslim says they will travel until the people come to Jabal Akumir, which is a mountain in Jerusalem. Okay, he's talking about the Gog and the Magog. He said that before Jesus prays for their destruction, after they drink up all the water, they will go to a mountain in Jerusalem and they will say, we did our job. We killed all the humans here. Somebody deal with that. So many of them. Allah will send rain, will cause it to rain that will wash these people away and cleanse the earth of them. And once the people just kill all the Arabs, they will then look up at the sky and shoot arrows up to the sky, and Allah will cause the arrows to come back covered in blood. Okay? And again, you guys know the Vikings. The Vikings, that's the era around the era of Dhul Qarnayn. I'm a historian. And that's probably how these people look. They're barbaric. This is probably how they look. This is probably how they dress still. Because again, Allah has not sent technology to them. They have swords. They have hammers. And the Gog and the Magog, they are the descendants. They are Turks, but they are not Turkish people. They are two tribes of Turks. They are the descendants, as Imam Bukhari puts in his Sahih. They are descendants of one of the sons of Noah. They are descendants of one of the sons of Noah. And they probably look like these people. Okay? And the reason why no one will be able to fight against them is because of their large numbers. Okay, and again, Imam Tirmidhi puts in his authentic hadith, the Muslims will light fires from the bows of and the arrows of the Yajooj and their weapons for 7 years after Allah destroys them. That's how many of them there are, guys. There are so many of them that even after Allah has the birds carry their bodies away, the people will still be digging up their swords. That's why, and their bows, their arrows. There's my dalil, that they're not using guns. And their swords, their bows and arrows will be found for 7 years after their death. That's how many of them. People say, oh, here's a bow and arrow from the Yajooj and Majooj. And there's many other hadiths too. And again, most all the scholars of hadith agree that because of the war against Islam, the earth has been depleted. The earth, all the weaponry and technology that man has had will be done disappear. And during the reign of Jesus, Allah will regrow the earth and stuff, so we won't have the technology, the guns and cars and all that stuff to fight, and cannons and bombs that we had before. It's back to primitive. And these people will have the upper hand over us because they've been living primitively all their existence. Also, we have a hadith from Ibn Majah. It's also authentic from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. He said, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, Allah will send worms in their necks and they will all die without a sound. And the Muslims will wake up the next day and they will say, is there not a man who will sacrifice himself and go down there and see why it's quiet? And one of them will go and he will think he's going to die, but he will find all of them lying dead on top of each other. And he will say, oh, Muslims, rejoice because Allah has vindicated us. Allah has saved us from the Yajooj and Majooj. So they'll just be lying all over the ground dead. And that's when the people who were living on earth at that time, who were not killed, they will come out from their cities and they will bring their animals out, but their animals will have no pasture, you know, to eat or drink from. Okay. But then Allah will cause them, when he sends that rain, Allah will cause the earth to regrow grass and stuff, and then the animals will get fat again. Okay, so again, you know, the Gog and the Magog, you know, they are people just like you and just like me. They are not jinn, they are not aliens, and they are in existence now. They're not invisible. It's just that they are behind a mountain that has a wall made of iron that Allah has not disclosed to us and will not disclose to us. But when Allah wills it, he will cause that iron wall to fall, and that's when they will come in and they will destroy all the Arabs. They're coming after you, the Arabs. All that Arabic y'all speak. You ain't gonna be able to save yourself from the hellfire with them Gog and Magog people. Should have been learning these hadiths. Should have been learning the consequences of trading your deen in for that money, that oil, the life of this world. You should have been learning these hadiths to not fall victim to women like you have, to not fall victim to falus like you have, to not fall victim to Darwin. Oh, Darwin was a great thinker. How dare you say that? When he didn't even believe that men should be with women and animals should be with animals. Consequences. All right, I'm going to stop right here. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions? Any comments? And I apologize for the two little hackers getting in here. My moderators are going to have to keep their eyes open. If they need help, let me know. Because these two little boys got issues. They ain't got no mama and daddy. They sitting at home on Xbox. All right. Okay. Inshallah, tomorrow, guys, we had the beginning of my new class. Please make sure you guys order the book from Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid, because that I will be teaching this class starting tomorrow. The Maqasidic Tafsir. The Maqasidic Tafsir. This class will begin tomorrow. Please go to Amazon. Anybody who has not bought the book, take a screenshot. The book is only $19.99. This is it, the second edition. The Maqasidic Tafsir, Volume 1. Purchase it, because that's going to be the 9:30 class tomorrow. Okay, if there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and close out for tonight. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.